Gosh, I love that Donkey Kong Bananza. Wow.
Hello and welcome to episode 449 of the Crate and Crowbar Gaming Podcast, being recorded on the 22nd of July 2025. I'm Marsh Davis, and tonight I'm joined by a sudden storm of gaming takes, a true man-made climate catastrophe that threatens to obliterate the discourse in a deluge of biblical fury and overflowing sewage, all of which comes courtesy of the novelist and game developer Chris Thurston.
Hi.
And the powerhouse drawings man, Paul Canavan.
Hello.
Welcome both. It's been a while, a literal while, since we spoke last. What's new?
Well, I've got news, I suppose. It's nice to be back. It's been 6 months in my case, I think, or maybe just over, maybe more, maybe less. It's been a while. You were right the first time. I shouldn't have corrected you. And yeah, a lot of that time has been spent very, very busy with work and projects and things. And the fruit of those efforts is that I have now achieved one of the, I will say, grindiest game dev achievements, which is working on a game for 7 years and then it getting cancelled and getting laid off. So it's
congratulations,
congrats, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's most people only go for that if you're trying to prestige the whole thing. But there's, I'm kind of glad I got it out of the way early-ish, just so that I can focus on things. Yeah, so that's obviously the partly the gives some sense of why I've been unavailable for quite a long time, but also the biggest news in my case because life's very different now. I can't, for obvious reasons, talk about the circumstances of the cancellation of the game and everything else. The studio where I was working, Hypixel Studios, is now in the process of closing. But on the positive side, I will say it's an odd time to be in the situation in the industry as a whole. And I think a week after I think our closure was announced, thousands and thousands and thousands of layoffs at Microsoft and so on. Obviously, it's been years of this. So I'm not truly kind of necessarily sure what comes next or what form that takes. I will say, just in a much broader sense, it really does feel, and now that I'm in it, I can sort of feel this even more acutely, that a lot of the fundamental balance or calculus of the industry has shifted quite a bit. Once upon a time, I think the deal was something like, you take all the creative autonomy you want at the expense of stability, or you get stability at the expense of your creative autonomy, right? Like you go indie and take that risk, or you join a big studio and you lend your efforts to something you might not have total control over. I'm not quite sure it's balanced like that anymore. I'll be totally honest in terms of the amount of stability offered by the traditional industry. But that notwithstanding, I'm going to be all right, I think, at least in the short to medium term. So I've got a bit of time to regroup and figure out what I want to do next. And I will say, I think this last couple of years, particularly working in creative direction and narrative design, has honed what I want to do in games. So I'm grateful for that, if nothing else. However, I will say, having been sort of thrust into the job market, I haven't actually done a job interview in 15, 16 years since I left university, because I've just fallen into everything since, basically, one way or another. I signed up for all the things. I updated my CV for the era of AI reading your CV and telling a hiring manager whether to give you an interview and all of that stuff, and all the things I didn't know had changed, like don't put your CV in columns anymore because it will confuse the robot. All of that shit.
God.
Yeah, did all of that. I've had 1 or 2 interviews, but I also signed up for Indeed, which is like the job search website in the UK. And within a day of doing this, you give it your CV, it reads it, you tell it your qualifications, and it kind of, alerts you if there's a job that you might be suitable for. I heard nothing for a few days. And then I got an email that said, "Hi, Chris, based on your qualifications, we think you'd be suitable for children's birthday clown." And I'm not joking, in Swindon. And the stupid thing is, they're not wrong.
I mean, that was my first suggestion.
It was like, and I was like, I mean, I wrote this whole cover letter about like managing a cross-disciplinary team, much like, and I'm trying to figure out all the different ways being like a kind of design of creative leading games isn't like being a children's birthday clown at scale. So there's always money in that direction, which is good to know. Other news on my part, I got engaged at the beginning of the year.
Congrats!
So, thanks. So that's lovely to my partner, now fiance, Abby. And about a month ago, we got a kitten, so my job now is object waggler. I just I'm on the computer probably playing a game or something, wasting my life, and Potato will come over to me and go, and I'll waggle an object and he'll have a fabulous time. Which is more reason why I should be a children's birthday assistant. So yes, that's my update. It's nice to be able to do this again and talk about video games, which we will
welcome
do
back
momentarily. Thank you.
I mean, all of this must have been quite tiresome to go through, but at least now you begin your second run, potentially in the games industry or elsewhere. At least you've unlocked double jump. You know, you can carry on with.
You genuinely do. I would say I haven't been able to put this into practice yet, but I think actually the skill you unlock is the ability to skip certain cutscenes. Like, I think I now have the ability to hold X and just phase out for certain parts of things. Yeah, been a learning experience. I'll say that. And ready for, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'd be very happy to just noodle on my own projects for a bit and see how severance pay treats me until something else comes along. And then there at the end of that particular rainbow, honka. Time to put on the nose.
Well, I mean, I'm very excited to see what you do next with Chris Unleashed. I think that'll be very exciting.
This is the thing. It's like, oh, I'm free. I'm also very tired.
So you probably need to take a few weeks to months off.
Yeah, I'm going to take. I mean, I've had a bit of that already, but yeah, I think having a kitten has been great because sometimes when he doesn't want me to waggle an object or he doesn't want to do a crime, he basically just wants, like, I think I'm learning from him more than the other way around because he will just want to like lie down and go to sleep. And he's reminded me that's a thing you can do, particularly when you're unemployed. You can just, you can lie down on any surface that will take you.
I think having a small, insane animal really teaches you a lot about, how you can spend.
Well, you're
your
very
time.
much in the same position, right, Paul?
Yeah, I have an insane, tiny, disabled chihuahua, which is a wonderful combination of words. And she screams all the time, but sometimes she takes a little break for a lie down, and that's when I sleep. It's so good.
Yes, it's been good. I mean, I'm glad to. I think getting a cat to support your kind of, meandering personal project is another game dev achievement. So really, it's kind of been a bit of a twofer in the early summer. So, yeah.
What have you been up to, Paul?
Just trying to sleep. Much the same. No, I've just been working away on Pale Tides, which we've talked about on the pod before, but it's my tabletop role-playing game about witchcraft. So I've just been working on, just playtests, just trying to make the words that are in my brain sit on the page in a way that another human can parse, and then hope that it doesn't suck. So that's my life. I'm working on some Magic the Gathering stuff, but mostly just working on my game. And it's good. It's glorious. I don't want to take up too much pod time with it, but it is.
Please do it.
Well, it's just mad making a game by yourself. It's genuinely mad. Chris has helped out. You should shout out my boy here. You've helped out with some editing work, and maybe more in the future now that you have more time.
Now that I have no job.
I was phrasing it as more time, but sure. Yes. But yeah, no, it's insane to make a game yourself. That's a stupid thing to do, especially since it's an original game system, and there's a lot to write. You know this, Marsh. You're also making a game. You're made game, almost finished make new game.
Well, maybe not almost. It feels a long way away yet. But yeah, the schedule is that we'll be completed within a few months. Will we make it? No.
Yes, it will. Yeah, I delayed mine until next year. My original plan was to ship in October. And then I got a project manager, shout out to Robin, who looked over what I was doing and said, there is literally no way this is ever going to happen. And so, yeah, I delayed it until next year, which was a good shout. You know, if you're making your own game, that is thankfully a power you have. You can communicate directly with your followers or fans or whatever and tell them, sorry, I'm bad. Love you. Bye.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big one of the maybe this is true in other big kind of other mediums, but I think games are particularly. There's so many different stages of game development, and I think people talk about like pre-production, production, etc. But I think really the two big ones are like charts and apologizing, and then and then ... I don't actually know what happens after that.
Nor I, to be honest.
Yeah, we'll figure it out together.
In theory,
buddy.
A game comes out at some point.
Yeah.
But yes.
Good.
Should we talk about games?
Yeah, let's do it.
So it really tickles me that during the hottest summer on record, you've both chosen to play Dune Awakening. Were you just yearning for a drier form of heat or something?
The children yearn for the sands of Arrakis is what I've learned. Yeah, so I don't really know what kind of possessed me to suddenly, basically go sight unseen into Funcom's new survival MMO game. But I think, it landed right before things went obviously sideways at work, and since then, I think I must be pushing 200 hours in it, and I think Paul's probably in the same boat because we jumped in the same weekend. And it's great. I'm someone who loves Dune. I think we talked about that in the past. We've done a Dune special at some point when the first of the new films came out.
But is this Dune? That's the reason I didn't even have any interest in playing it, because I saw the trailers. I was like, okay, that's not Dune. That's just basically PlanetSide on a sand planet.
Sand PlanetSide. I think actually Dune as a thing has been adapted quite successfully quite a few times, I would say, like from the original, or it's formed the basis of games in lots of different ways that people like, from like Dune Imperium to the original RTS games and so on. And I think they're all different takes on the material, right? Like the books are the books are the books, and I think it's not trying to replace those. But it is, I think, the most fully realized version of that setting I've had a chance to play in. Mm-hmm. And one thing I think, and it's clearly been made, I think it has the film license. It certainly has like the typography of the movies and stuff like that, and quite a lot of the industrial design, but it kind of goes in its own direction with different stuff. But it's clearly been written and conceived by people who care a great deal about the books. Like they're sort of there in every detail. And obviously they're going to make concessions, and there will be things we'll definitely talk about that sort of a little bit, to the side of Dune logic to some extent. But wherever possible, basically the entire game is grounded in the logic as established in the books, basically. And so, including things like the premise, which I really like. I think it's a really clever bit of like a way of working around the story and to give them some space to go somewhere else with it. So the premise for Dune Awakening is, which is explained to you every time you load the game, in an unstoppable cutscene where Paul Atreides goes, I dream of it. Directly into your ears. It opens with this monologue by Paul Atreides, who doesn't exist in this universe, because basically it's an alternate timeline where Jessica Atreides, Paul's mother, does what she's told to do by the Bene Gesserit and has a girl rather than a boy. And if you're familiar with the plot of Dune, Jessica was supposed to have a girl who would marry Fade Rautha, the Harkonnen, and produce the Kwisatz Haderach. And instead, she went with Duke Leto's desire to have a male heir and created Paul, etc., etc., etc. The rest of Dune happens. So the notion is Paul, who can see through all these timelines because of his spice brain, is seeing this one timeline where his mother made the other decision. And they've done this really nice job of threading like a bit of like a what if scenario from that point, where because Jessica remains faithful to the Bene Gesserit, they make her a truth speaker who has the ability to see through Dr. Yue's plan, so the Atreides never fall. Or at least they get attacked by the Harkonnens, but they don't lose because they don't get betrayed from the inside. So instead, the Emperor gets kind of caught out in his attempt to kind of subvert the Atreides. So Arrakis ends up in the very awkward position of a kind of what in the book is called a war of assassins. So basically, like both houses present on Arrakis, neither of them officially in charge under the rules of Canly, neither of them able to attack the other openly, but everyone engaged in this little kind of war of trying to pick each other's leadership off with assassins across the surface of the thing. And that gives you your kind of setup for Arrakis being torn between both of the classic, opposing houses, but with neither of them ascendant. Then at the start of the game, you make your own character and what planet they're from and what social background they have and what social level they're from and so on, and who their kind of secret mentor was when they were a child. Like, were they a Bene Gesserit themselves, or were they a Mentat or something like that? And then that character you make is immediately interrogated by Reverend Mother of the Bene Gesserit. They do the whole stick your hand in the box thing, and you're sent down to the surface of Arrakis to find the Fremen who have vanished in this version of the story because the Sardaukar went and tried to wipe them out. And on the way down, your ship crashes, and then you're in the desert, and then video game proceeds from that point. And from then onwards, like all of the mechanics and stuff are really tied into Dune stuff. So as a survival game, it's very much about heat and water rather than like hunger and those kinds of things. The obviously sand, step on sand, perhaps worm, fundamental Dune stuff. But even things like if you have a Holtzman shield or a suspensor pack, if you use it, that attracts the worm faster and so on. Like shields are incredibly effective, but instead of a heavy melee attack, you have a slow melee attack, which is if you can create an opening for it with like a parry or a timed attack, you can then slip a blade through your opponent's shield, which does like a massive amount of damage. All the Dune stuff. So yeah, to your point, Marsh, like actually, like I like it as a game, and we can talk about all the different things that we've enjoyed about it. But I think as an adaptation, it's really on point. And then when it starts to play with its alternate timeline and bring characters back in different ways that you haven't seen them before, and it's actually like I'm enjoying it like a lot for that. And I think like I would otherwise be quite fussy about Dune stuff, and I think they've, within the parameters of an MMO survival game, gotten off to like a really, really good start with it. So yeah, that's mine. Yeah.
I completely dismissed it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so its DNA is very much rooted in stuff like Conan Exiles, which I thought was itself like Funcom MMOs and survival games have always like had that a bit of jank to them, etc. I think Funcom as a company has sort of like persisted on the, not the margins, because some of those games are really big, like Conan Exiles was, but like on the periphery of MMOs and survival games for decades, as other sort of giant games have kind of risen and fallen alongside them. So like, obviously WoW being the big one, like WoW and Age of Conan, like living in eking out its own existence on the edge of the genre that WoW dominated, or Conan Exiles eking out its existence alongside like Rust and GTA Online and other games that people use for role playing and stuff like that. This feels like the most complete package they've done in a long time, like as a game, like as both a survival game and as an MMO. And I think because of that long history, it almost feels quite retro in its way. Like it feels like an old school MMO. Like it's not, we can talk about this probably at length. It's got balance issues and stuff like that, but it's got the bones of something like a Star Wars Galaxies, the fringes of it, like the kind of online game they don't tend to make nowadays, in terms of like, just go live on this planet with your buddies and, in the end game, like get into scraps in the deep desert when there's a spice blow and try and escape with enough melange to bribe the Landsrad to get cool cosmetics.
But I think in a really
like that
kind
stuff,
of positive way, like
yeah.
I think people could perceive that as a negative thing, but actually, yeah, it feels nostalgic. Like you kind of mentioned Star Wars. Which one did you mention? Galaxies? Yes. Like it does hark back to that kind of feeling of old school MMOs being in there with your buddies, even though it's brand new. But it's all the good aspects of that. I think the thing that gets me very excited is that it plays astonishingly well. Like, I'm here for the setup. I think the story is great. I've always been a big fan of Dune and the books and the films, etc. And like you say, it does kind of live kind of in the middle of those two things. But mechanically, it is wonderful. And I think that that's another reason to maybe give it a peek, because the movement in that game is absolutely fantastic. The sense of sort of navigating this world just feels great consistently, whether you're on foot or in a sand bike, or once you get ornithopters and so on, and the world kind of opens up in this sort of dramatic way.
They've done some really so the structure of the game is basically you join a server and then a siege, like a Fremen settlement within that server, and that determines what there's basically one region of Arrakis called Haga Basin, which you start in and spend probably the first 100 hours in, but because you can't leave it except paying a shuttle pilot until you have an ornithopter. But once you have an ornithopter, you can fly to the edge of it. Oh, hello. Sorry, Potato has decided to join me. He's I hope that the microphone picked that up, because that was adorable.
Did you mention that your cat was called Potato, by the way?
I think I did, yes. My cat's called Potato. Potato has joined. Potato is also the name I give to my opinions, which have arrived. Sorry, distracted by kitten. But you're in this region called Haga Basin, which you share with probably about 40 or 50 other players. But you are collectively a part of a bigger server. And when you can leave Haga Basin in the late game, you can fly your ornithopter to other parts of Arrakis, to the big cities, or to what's called the Deep Desert, which is effectively like a huge open desert region with the highest level resources and the biggest worms, that goes through a hard reset and has its landscape kind of re-randomized by the Coriolis storm every 3 weeks. And then that becomes that kind of end game guild v guild thing. I think that's where a lot of the balancing issues and stuff exists at the moment. Paul and I have only just got to the fringe of that, playing basically as solo or a pair. Mm-hmm. But the experience before that is of survival, but mostly survival game stuff, really, like survival game loops within an MMO shell. So to Paul's point, it, even though it has leveling and damage values, it doesn't lean on that too hard for difficulty. So combat's very lethal, which makes it feel a lot better than equivalent games. There aren't, more often than not, if you parry someone with a knife and then get a knife through their shield, they die. And that sort of scales quite nicely with you. And you are thinking more about survival and gear upkeep and power and the worm than you are about levels and numbers and stuff. The numbers stuff is reserved for resources, because it is a game about, refining ore and building up your kind of going from one gear tier to the next crafting tier. But to me, I really like that, because it puts the numbers stuff into the game world. It's physically the stuff you're gathering. It's the amount of water you've managed to suck out of a dude. Recycling blood is a big part
blood.
of this.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah. Oh no, I've not gone there, unfortunately. There are tiers of everything. So I'll give you, there's lots of different ways you can choose to get water. You can get a dew harvesting scythe, in the books, and go out in the morning for it's a couple of in-game minutes before dawn breaks in the morning, where you can go out and harvest dew into your liter johns and then take them back to your base and either drink it or use it as part of crafting. But the most efficient way to gather water, particularly early game, is to pull blood out of people with a little blood device, which, as you level it up, eventually becomes a kind of fucking massive, two-handed blood, suck out all a man's blood with one huge, mini gun-sized device object. Which I think the first time I did that, Paul, I just heard you in the background Jesus Christ! It's
just getting my blood cannon out.
Towards the end of at a particular milestone in the story, you earn the ability to make Fremen death stills, at which point a certain amount of farming is going out to get ore, but also just throwing corpses into the back of a buggy to just have little stock to just keep feeding them into the death stills, which take an hour in real time to render someone down into a decent amount.
And you get to watch it as well, by the way.
Yeah,
a lot of the stuff is beautifully animated. You get to see the body covered by a sort of film, and over time it just descends, it caves in. It's beautiful.
So there's that. And then, it's tons of stuff. I mean, I'm probably rambling at this point, but like there's nice little rhythms to it. Like it's a lot, you don't get sunstroke during the night. You don't get overheated. It's Unreal Engine, looks great. But the like staying in the shadows is important, but those are like natural shadows, like the natural shadows of rocks and stuff like that. So you are trying to constantly like move from shadow to shadow during the day until you get better equipment and still suits and stuff. And then at night, the worm is less active, and you don't have to worry about being like overheating. But that's when the Sardaukar ships come down and search the desert with spotlights. And if they find you, they'll kind of put you in a grav trap, and sort of Sardaukar commandos will like float down on suspensors, and then you might be into a fight and stuff like that, which gives it's like nice little variance in tension. And then as you like, and it's interesting because we've been obviously like hundreds of hours of this now, and it's really weird thinking back to like the first few hours of sprinting from cover to cover across open sand, terrified of every little. You have a little sort of seismograph thing that pops up whenever you're on open sand for the worm sign, and like the terror of it popping out.
What do you do when a worm's after you? Can you do anything?
Run or die. Really.
Run or die. Like so, the worm. So the worm is a physical thing in the map, and there's a finite number of them. And so this is the thing it's done that I really like. Like obviously, it's cheating some stuff behind the scenes, but it's not. In another game, the worm would just be like effectively like an effect, right? Like an equivalent. And I really like Sea of Thieves. So this isn't ragging on Sea of Thieves, but like the Kraken in Sea of Thieves, for example. It like turns the water black, and then the tentacles come up. And if you're underwater, it blacks out the water partly, so you don't see. It's just the tentacles, right? You know what I mean? But Smoke and Mirrors are like that, are how games are made, and Dune is doing that as well. But they through a mixture of like VFX and actually having a physical model of the worm moving through the world, it is physically somewhere at any given time, and then.
And you can track it as well, which ties into what you were saying about, staying true to the story. You really can look out for worm sign and tell your friends, okay, it's over there. We're probably safe right now.
Or put a thumper somewhere else to drag it somewhere when you want it to go somewhere else. When it gets aggroed, basically, when the worm sign kind of spikes, it pops out of the ground, usually about 500 meters-ish from where you are, and then dives back in and just starts going for you. And if you have a bit of time to get out of the way, it can surprise you, and there are worms of bigger sizes that can do different things. But if it gets you, you're dead, and everything you're carrying at the time is just gone. Normally, there's some corpse recovery stuff. There's quite a lot of forgiveness on dying, basically for any other way. But if Shai Hulud gets you, he will nick all your shit, and so much so that the first time, this isn't really a spoiler, the first time you die to the worm, because you are in the story going on some spice visions and things like that, so you kind of learn what it means when like your eyes turn blue over the course of the campaign, stuff like that. But you go into like a vision where a kind of a manifestation of the spice itself, or of Shai Hulud, basically goes like, sorry about that. I know you probably didn't mean to lose all your stuff earlier in the game. Here's a free bike. And then...
Because it's a video game.
It's a video game. And because at that point, they almost certainly had a playtest where it's like one of the first little milestones is like building a sand bike, which you kind of need to get from basically the starter zone. It's all contiguous, but there's a gap of open sand that you're never going to run across. So you basically build your first vehicle, the sand bike, and use that to get across a gap when the worm's distracted or something like that. And I think they understand that if people fail that, they would probably like churn out of the game if they didn't have another go at it. So Shai Hulud is like, this once. I will give you a free bike.
I'll vomit up a bike for you.
But now you're on your own. Goodbye. Like,
actually, genuinely, that sort of scene, or that setup, I think, is like a masterstroke in game design. Because you, like Christopher said, you started off in this little area where you're just the worm is terrified. The audio in the game, I think, is worth calling out. Like the audio is phenomenal. The sound of the worm sort of clucking away and moving through the environment. The way it makes everything shake and rumble when it's nearby. Like, it's impossible not to be terrified of this thing in the early game. And I mean, I'm still 190 hours in, but in different ways. But the initial area is quite sort of constrained. You occasionally have to run across a gap, and it's a little bit scary, but you're probably going to be fine. But then, the moment that Chris mentioned where you have to cross this large area to get from sort of the first zone into the second zone is utterly terrifying. Like, I was absolutely bricking it, getting ready, seeing how close I could get to the edge before the sand started to move, and then just absolutely booking it across and watching my fuel. And the worm, of course, they've set it up nicely so that it is enough of a gap that the worm is likely to pursue you, or maybe it's guaranteed, I don't know, but it absolutely chased me, and it was harrowing in a really kind of wonderful way. Wow. It's very good. Now,
can you walk without rhythm?
You can't. Well, it does work because worm sign reacts to like how you're moving. There isn't like a specific skill to like move in a fun way, right. But I do now
like
have
hammering W.
yeah. So you do it by basically like a bit of strafing, walk forward a little bit, like that sort of thing. But I do now
can do it like that then.
You mean because it's dynamic, right? Like it's responding to how much impact you're having on the sand, how far away the worm is. And other things, like if you have your shield on, you're fucked, right? Like Dune logic, like it will just piss off the worm straight away. They have had to do some fun things with that. Like obviously in Dune, if a laser hits a shield, it creates like a nuclear explosion, which is why swords and knives are the thing. They obviously can't really do that in a game that has mining lasers and shields, have players nuking each other. So they've had to like find a plot reason why like the lasers automatically switch off if they go over a shield. But I love its level of like respect for all of that stuff. It's really kind of fun. And then by the time like the vehicles are great, like by the time you get like a sand bike, eventually a buggy which can have like a mining laser on the top, and then up to several tiers of ornithopter, and eventually like sand crawlers and not quite carryalls but like big carrier ornithopters for like carrying vehicles out to the desert, at which point it's like that's where you get into like the guild v guild stuff and so on. I think that's the stuff where it's getting some flack for that at the moment. Like the end game is uneven, I think, because it's quite a different game to the one it is before then. And also because there are quite a lot of balancing issues, which I guess we could talk about. Like it does change quite dramatically. And I think there is an interesting tension with the game between like wanting to, I mean, actually, to be honest, Shai Hulud vomiting up a bike for you is a good example of this, like wanting to be user-friendly and somewhat forgiving, and wanting to, and crucially wanting to be playable by a solo player, all of which it is, very much so, but then also having some friction or some reasons for players to interact with each other. And I think they haven't quite found that balance. And so it is a game of making your own fun at a certain point. Like to give you an example, you have a device that lets you basically save a small vehicle and it just sort of goes into your inventory, and then you can spit it back out again with the same device, like a summoning, basically like summoning a mount in WoW. You can do that with your sand bike, and that feels fine. You can also do it with scout ornithopters, which is the smallest class of ornithopter. And so almost everyone past a certain point in the game has a helicopter in their pocket. And that changes quite a lot about how just the game functions at a certain point, where it's like you can't store it if it has something in its cargo hold, for example. But if you, I mean, I haven't really played PvP yet, but if you were to like try and ambush someone in the desert, you have to be ready for them to suddenly have a helicopter.
Just become a helicopter.
Yeah, exactly. Which it does, that sort of thing takes away from the appeal of like, there's not much reason for multi-person vehicles to exist, even though you have these multi-seater ornithopters and stuff, because why would you catch a ride with your friend if you have a helicopter in your trousers? You know? And there's also balancing things, but more than anything else, like I think the position I've arrived at with it is, I think the core of it is so strong and the core fantasy is compelling, and we haven't even talked about building yet, which is most of the 200 hours both Paul. A lot. And one thing I really need to explain is we talk about all the systems and the the story and stuff like that. Fundamentally, what Paul and I have spent the last 2 sweltering weeks doing is quietly playing Lego next to each other. Like not building the same thing, like a quiet co-playing sort of arrangement. Like we got dropped off by our mums and we've both been sat there building Lego ornithopters, which is something I actually literally did do last year. It's great. But, but I think the fundamentals are really strong. And like for its issues, like I think it's such a robust platform to build on, so much so now, and we should talk about the building. Now, honestly, if they added a 10 quid DLC just to get new like blocks and component types for buildings. Paul is sort of rapturously shaking his head back and
I
forth.
would spend so much money on stupid cosmetics for this silly video game.
Because here's the other thing. It's a lot about base building from the early stages. And Conan Exiles has really good base building. And this game has built on that in a huge way. So we've talked about all of this. What the game is actually about is making cool Dune buildings and like designing your own ornithopter hangar. And if that phrase lights something up in you, then you should play this game. Like, it's like the part of me that as a child was obsessed with Tracy Island from Thunderbirds, like any sort of structure where vehicles can come out of different fun parts of it. This game has activated that for me. We've built our bases side by side, each expressing a different take on like where an ornithopter might come out.
I've got like an Atreides sort of like fortress with multiple levels, and you have this beautiful kind of
towering chome artifice, a towering chome.
What a chome it is! Yeah, I think it's the best building I can remember in a game. Like I think Valheim was my kind of high bar previously because I really enjoyed the construction in that game, and the games are quite similar in a lot of ways actually. But yeah, this blows it out of the water. I mean, there's truly nothing quite like building a big stupid monolith.
You see a lot of like people's shit bases out in the desert. Like this is just a cube full of vital gameplay functions. But like when you see someone who's like really like you'll be driving past, you're like, man, that hangar idea looks great. Or I hadn't thought about using this piece in that particular way because it's all sort of modular stairs and walls and columns and just bits and bobs. And you just go home and start redesigning stuff, and then you message your friend Paul to say, I've changed the shaft, and then
and then I come and examine the shaft, and I think that's great. It reminds me of Verdansk.
I've got a little I've got a big staircase just in case my suspensor belt, which is the kind of like hovery belt thing, anti-grav belt people wear in Dune. There's also an incredibly funny thing, which is I understand why they've done it. Obviously, if you build on open sand, worm's going to have that. So you don't do that. You build on the edge of like where the sand joins the rocks so that the worm will leave you in peace. And the building, you place down like an initial thing that gives you your building zone, which you can then extend. But regardless of how you extend it, there is a invisible point past which the worm don't like it anymore. And they've clearly decided that it's frustrating for players to trial and error where the worm will and won't let them build if that has potentially lethal consequences. So there is a special way for the worm to appear where it just fucking bursts out of the ground inside your house sometimes, and it's massive, like it is huge, and just deletes all the blocks it doesn't like, and then plunges back into the sand, throws you up in the air. It's the only time it doesn't kill you instantly. It throws you up in the air, throws your vehicles up in the air, and then it'll vanish back into the sand. You had I haven't had too much problem with this because my base is kind of squeezed up against some rocks, Paul, but you've been constantly like edging forward. It's like watching someone get into a protracted back and forth with like the local council's planning department. Like the NIMBY worm will not let Paul have his balcony.
I absolutely shit myself every time as well. It is it's like very funny and utterly terrifying. I named like our first base was worse for it because we were right on the edge of the sort of a large expanse of desert. And that base I named Worm's Reach because the worms kept reaching my fucking base, like, no matter what I did.
It was defined by where the worm couldn't reach, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'll be working on my tower and Paul will be working on his fortress, and then I'll just hear this like deafening rumble. And he'll flying in the air, and the worm will just like delete a lovely portico and then go back into the ground.
Well, actually, the other, not to drag this on too long, but it is funny. My favorite feature of this, because I've experienced so many attacks from the worm on my beautiful house, when you build a single tile that the worm doesn't like, it will growl in the deep desert. You'll hear this kind of rumbling, like noise. So when it happens, I just kind of gingerly delete the bits that I made, and the worm is silent, and all is well. So we've kind of reached a sort of a rapport where we're fine now. It's okay. I know his boundaries. I don't push them.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a very stupid game.
Yeah, it's like a sitcom. Basically, it's like two roommates and their third roommate, Shai Halud.
Sometimes bold halud.
Yeah, sometimes he's not shy at all. Oh God, the Dune puns.
The Dune puns, I don't think we can even go into. There's
No,
too
it's not
many.
going to it. It's too much. Put it
Innumerable.
streaming the game at some point, but yeah. But yeah,
Can I say one more thing about it?
Yeah, please.
I mentioned the movement being great, and this is something we've talked about a lot. This game has ruined all open world games for me. I went back to try and play Tears of the Kingdom recently because I got a Switch 2 and I wanted to experience it in glorious 60 frames per second or whatever. And that's a game that's kind of similar. It's a big kind of a post-apocalyptic world with stuff to climb on. Dune's climbing and movement in general is just so slick. The way that you can basically use almost like a grapple hook wire to pull yourself through the world and then hold spacebar to activate your suspensor belt so you go flying through the air. It is absolutely glorious. I just wanted to say that because
it is. It has the sort of new Zelda stamina based climb everything sort of thing, so you can climb wherever you like. But yeah, I think what's mad is the grapple hook thing is technically a missable ability. Like there is like 5 different skill trees, and you can unlock all of them. But it's on the trooper skill tree is this like Shiga wire grapple that just pulls you towards this point, or like temporarily stuns an opponent and pulls them towards you. But because the way its physics works, if you fire that and then activate your suspensor belt, which at the higher tiers like nullifies gravity, you can just shoot yourself like miles. Which weirdly doesn't feel like anti-theme because Dune is full of like lots of gravity weirdness and like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And using the suspensor, the worm don't like it, but it is a way to get around. But that feels like so like intended as the way to traverse the world that it's mad to me that it's like a skill tree unlock for a particular skill tree and not like the default. Because the other one that felt really essential early on is what we started calling the Bene Gesserit zoomies, where it's called something like the Bindu sprint or whatever. But the point is your character like goes into like a sort of sprinter's ready pose and then just starts fucking booking it. And like I guess it's because the Bene Gesserit, like the weirding ways of the Bene Gesserit let them run real fucking quick, like
very fast, famously.
Yeah, just the fastest nuns in space. But that's really good initially for getting between like islands of safety in the desert. But then hilariously you realize that you will sprint in basically an unsteerable straight line for a fixed amount of time and you can't stop. So you end up with this just sort of like colossal momentum like carrying you into mischief. But yeah, like your first attempts into the desert to gather fine flower sand to make silicon from are often spent like creeping out into the desert, gathering a little bit of sand, turning around as soon as the worm appears and just like fucking booking it incredibly fast in the other direction like a Looney Tune. And one of the funniest things I saw recently, it is quite janky around the edges of the game. Like it's not like the movement feels great and I think the combat feels really good as well, but it's got a little bit of, you know, that kind of core jank to it.
Classic Funcom jank.
I did see someone say that they accidentally activated the Bene Gesserit zoomies at the same time as using their Shiga wire grapple and their suspensor belt while climbing a mountain, and the resulting physics propelled them 150,000 kilometers into the air above the massive Spacing Guild ship you can see in orbit. And then they died of thirst before they hit the ground. Which is just like Dune. There's loads I could say about it. There's we should maybe like it has some. I really like a lot of the writing, particularly like the codex entries and stuff, are really on point. Like that writing team clearly cares a lot about Dune and a lot about the books and kind of writing stuff that feels appropriate to it. And the big beats of the story and lots of the central performances, I think, are good, fine, great, you know, kind of video game stuff. But there is some, there are some choices in there about like just there's a character in it which I thought was like you meet these like minor house agents in different parts of the desert, and there's a guy nearish the start of the game, nearest the starting zones, who you meet in a cave, and he's supposed to be, I think, like a spy master or something. And he's immediately like, "Hello, it's a bit hot here, isn't it?" And
a bit warmer than that June.
It's always sweltering. And then you can kind of go through this conversation, and it actually gives you the option to say, "You seem too silly for this planet." And it's like it feels like they're improvising their way out of a creative choice they made. It's like, hey, there's a Harkonnen base over there.
There's an abundance of performers. There's several Scottish people I've come across. Now, every time I'm like, what are you doing here? You learned nothing. Why are you here? It's bizarre.
There's also, I mean, it's funny because like one thing I think it struggled with a little bit is it's technically, you don't have to join one of the big factions, the Atreides or the Harkonnens, but it is kind of set up in that like Horde alliance sort of thing. And it kind of affects like what buildings you get access to. You do actually get access to both, but
does it prohibit who you play with?
Not really, because ultimately the house that you choose to belong to, I think, is one of the minor houses, and then you're all contributing. You're basically in the end game trying to get spice to make melange to basically sell to the Spacing Guild to influence land strat votes, and that's kind of the classic Dune strategy game end game stuff. But you choose between the Atreides and the Harkonnen, and I think Paul, you've played much more of the faction stuff than I have. But I think one thing that struck me right away is that's an area of the story or Dune as a setting that doesn't lend itself amazingly well to this. Because I think if you're going to do like particularly two faction games where there's a big risk of like the whole server being on one side or another, they both need to be really individually compelling. And the thing about Dune kind of shoots itself in both feet, because the most interesting thing about the Atreides is their honor and everything else gets them killed. Like, that's the point, right? Like, it's not, they have the Ned Stark problem or whatever, right? Like, the point is not like they're honorable and good and duty bound. It's that they fucking die. Like, that's the thing and so in this, you have a faction that at least initially is like, we are the good guys. We're honor bound and kind of like just, sort of ancient Greece, but also America in space. Like that. And look at our big eagle. Like that's the sort of the vibe, and it's quite boring. But the Harkonnens are such outright total bastards 100% of the time that they can't even do they can't even get away with the kind of like, I don't know, cheeky dark elves kind of thing, where it's like, yeah, they're bastards, but really they're kind of the slightly sexier ones. Because the first Harkonnen you meet is like, hello, I'm from Planet Bastard and I love slaves. And you're like, oh, shit. Okay. Like, this is the choice then.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it struggles with that a little bit, because obviously if there was a third faction, it'd probably be the Fremen, and they'd be the right one to join, because that's sort of the story of Dune. So I'm interested to see how that balances out over time.
Yeah, I can touch on that just a little from my experience of playing through the Atreides questline, who are the most boring, of course. But I would kind of be intrigued to see how the Harkonnen story goes, because without any spoilers, the Atreides questline, which I assumed was going to be exactly what you described, does portray a slightly more nuanced version of where their story could go, because it sort of seems like they're falling apart. And I always kind of got the sense that we've got that kind of a timeline that shouldn't exist concept, where the Atreides obviously have these values and morals and are this powerful entity that was wiped out. Whereas in this timeline, because that didn't happen, maybe I may well be reading into this too much, but like I like that sense that they're actually just like crumbling because they shouldn't exist. Again, maybe the Harkonnen story is equally.
I think it's a first impressions thing more than anything else, but it is an area where I think they struggle to like. That's, I think, where its use of the IP is weakest, is where it's like the kind of slightly superficial, like surface level. Are you Team Atreides or Team Harkonnen? Which is not really like how that should boil down, right? Like it's always a bit more kind of broad and expressive than that. But yeah, I like a lot about what they've done with the story otherwise. But I will say the core of it, I think if I was to say one last thing about it, to sell it, even just playing as a two-player thing, I haven't found this balance of like wanting to play a game for its own sake, like just, go explore and, grind levels and materials and stuff. The creative expression side of it, like building, because I love that in games anyway. But also, crucially, that sort of like co-op resource gathering thing, which is what like reminds me of Star Wars Galaxies or Eve, things like that. It's not quite to that level of sophistication, or it's not to that level of sophistication. But like finding like free-form solutions to problems, particularly for each other, is really nice. And to give an example, when you reach kind of the highest tier of crafting you can do in that core area of the game in Haga Basin, a crucial ingredient you need, these crystals, only spawn in an area of the map that is dangerous anyway, but also totally irradiated by crashing ships. Oh yeah, there are ships that crash out of the sky because of the war in space and then land in the desert, and you can try and salvage them before they get eaten by the worm. It's cool stuff, cool shit like that. Anyway, it's this area that's totally irradiated, and so you need a radiation suit to survive in there for any length of time. You can make iodine tablets to survive a bit longer, but your excursions into there are usually pretty short and frantic because you're like landing your ornithopter, you're having to wade through like toxic goo to like mine these crystals, load up the ornithopter storage with them, and get out before the radiation takes you, basically. And incidentally, we had like a great afternoon of like picking through crashed spaceships, like using the cutting laser to cut away bulkheads and like carve into these ships and loot them and stuff like that. It feels like a different game all of a sudden. It's very, very cool. But anyway, I had this idea. I started thinking about the Dune RTS games, and I realized I have an opportunity here to like build an actual like second base for both of us. And again, this might be something that people could listen to this and be like, I don't know why this seems so compelling to your brain. But honestly, this was like, I've just had like an idea that's I have to do now because something internally in me is finding this incredibly compelling, which is I tried to build the smallest and most economical base I could that had storage space, a garage for a buggy, and a roof that would serve as a double duty as a landing pad for an ornithopter, with enough generators and power to keep it shielded. Oh, we haven't talked about the sandstorms. Sandstorms, big, huge, physicalized sandstorms.
There's so much in this game.
There's so much stuff.
It's absurd.
And then what I did is build it next to our bases where it's relatively safe and map it all out in the smallest footprint I could get it. And then there's this tool you can build. There's like a one-shot thing that lets you scan a building you've made and then place its blueprint, not copy it because you still have to reinvest the resources, but place its blueprint somewhere else. And then once it's placed, the device is destroyed. So I saved it, broke it down, so I had exactly the right components for it, loaded all the components into my ornithopter, flew into the radiation zone, and built this little mining depot. And then I built a new buggy, took that out there in parts, reassembled it, put it in the garage. Because otherwise it's really hard to get a buggy out there. So that we have what is essentially like the resource depot building from an RTS game, like the Dune RTS. And the way to do it is you fly out there, land on the roof, go in, get in the buggy, do a lap of all of the resource nodes in the buggy, which is a lot safer and has a much higher capacity. Load all that stuff into the ornithopter, or you can have a mate waiting for you to pick stuff up from the depot and then fly it back to the main base and drop it off to be refined into duralinium. And this either sounds probably achingly boring or like the most satisfying thing I have done in a game in ages. Is just like slightly ease the stress of that particular resource gathering loop with like a bit of original sort of planning is like, that's delicious to me. Mm-hmm. It made me so happy.
I'm smiling just thinking about it.
Yeah. We went
You're
out
a little freak who's excited about this, then you'll love Dune Awakening.
Yeah.
Out now on Steam.
It's basically, it's like, do you like Dune and Lego? If so, you'll like the Lego Dune Ornithopter, which is a great kit, but also this game.
See, I do like both of those things, but I don't love MMOs and I don't love survival games when they just feel like health bar keepy uppy. Is there a lot of grinding, and how kind of cruel and burdensome are the survival parts of this game? Because it sounds to me like you've just been talking directly to my fantasies about a Dune game this whole time, but I do remember trying to pass off every fun game that came across my review desk to other people for 5 to 10 years.
I'd be really fascinated to know what you made of it, Marsh, because I'm genuinely unsure. Like, I think it takes a little while to get into its rhythms. In terms of it's not hugely punitive, or at least it's not punitive in a way that I found annoying. Like, for me, it's like, is this creating interesting tension, or is this a chore that I'm doing to stay on top of? Like, for me, like, I think this is a good way to think about the genre, and I've also spent a few years thinking about the genre now, is like, I think survival games at their baseline is a really helpful framework, because the basic principle of a survival game is if you stay still, you will eventually lose, right? Like, if you don't move, the game will end, which is not true, for example, of something like Path of Exile. If you stay still in town, you might time out, but otherwise the numbers cannot go down. right? Like just by your inaction cannot make things worse. And I think actually inaction making things worse is actually kind of interesting. Like it adds entropy and it adds sort of like dynamics over time. What makes those games stressful is if you're having to work so hard to stay at 0 that you can barely muster the energy or time to get to a plus number.
Yeah.
I think the balance for me is when achieving that equilibrium and pushing beyond it feels rewarding and is pushing you into loops that you are finding satisfying one way or another. So like with that radiation example, it's like I've made that loop shorter by investing myself in a solution and expressing myself through that solution. And that's what's good about it. In the early game, you do feel it a lot more acutely, like the water stress and so on. But it's actually quite hard to die from any of those things, like including sunstroke. Most of it affects the size of your health bar and how much stamina you have available. Like if you are fully watered, if you have there's no hunger or anything, it's just water and heat basically. If you have water, then you actually get bonus stamina and it's faster. And if you completely bottom out, you can basically like suck water off like dry plants in the desert to get back to a certain degree, or like you can drink blood, but it makes you sick, like that sort of thing. But like you're unlikely to full on die from exposure, but you are likely to kind of struggle more to survive the other things if you're not staying on top of that. But it's never felt like a kind of lose more situation to me.
And I don't think it feels like a chore either. Like I actually think the early game is balanced really well. They tutorialize stuff pretty well. And actually, I think my kind of big takeaway was going to be that even though it certainly is an MMO, a lot of it never really felt like an MMO. The systems didn't get in the way too much of my enjoyment of the universe. I enjoyed the early game struggles because they felt really appropriate to what was happening. You know, characters just being dumped on Arrakis and is having to learn the ropes. I think the only thing that kind of got in my way a little bit or intimidated me a little bit was first looking at the research tree and being like, oh God, what are all these things and all these words that I remember from a series of books, but I don't necessarily know what they mean. That was a little bit intimidating, but honestly, I think the game introduces it all quite slickly, quite smoothly, and again, like the punishing elements of the difficulty in the early game, I think it earns that. You know, it really feels in keeping with the world in a kind of nice way, and it makes it feel so good when suddenly, actually, the desert sun doesn't matter that much anymore to me because I've made my still suit, and now I'm stronger, and water is much less of an issue. Now that I can just chuck a bunch of guys in the sarcophagus, everything's great, you know. I don't need to elaborate on that joke. But yes, I would love to. I mean, if you ever want to play it with us, that'd be really fun.
Yeah.
I would.
Introduce you.
Usually when we're on this podcast and somebody's excited about a game, I go, oh yeah, that sounds really good. I'll definitely play that. I have absolutely no intention of ever playing it, but I really, really want to play this. This sounds so good.
I really hope you like it.
I'm so into the Dune fiction that I think it would probably drag me along into the.
I think it is certainly kind of jank. It feels like I admire it because I feel like they made a lot of game with a fairly lean set of parts that are all quite impactful, but like, you know, it probably does benefit from like just enjoying being in the setting and just enjoying like the core loops of it. I'd be interested to know if it kind of, because it's completely grabbed me like in a way I didn't expect, but I think but like that sort of little bit of self-expression and sort of like fun chores has really kind of kept it going for me. One thing I will say about the survival stuff as well is it moves quite quickly. Like it doesn't overstay its welcome with any given set of mechanics really, but also I think quite soon it starts to let you sort of choose what kind of difficulty you want, which I think is key for a game like this. So there are basically 3 armor classes. There are still suits, which are the lightest, light armor and heavy armor. And the heavier armor will make it, you know, you're heavier, it's harder to get around and it's less advantageous from a water point of view, but you take less damage from enemies. And obviously you're investing resources in making all of these things. But I've basically spent I, for example, would rather not take damage in combat by being sneaky with like a poisoned dart rifle and a sword, and avoiding fights than fighting them head on, in return for the alleviated water pressure that comes from having a still suit. Like if you have a still suit on, you constantly have like an extra water bar that sort of ticks up as your character runs around and sweats and presumably shits and pisses. And you can press F at any time to take a little sip and top it off. You know what I mean? Like, and that's how I like to be in my Arrakis. And so I've sort of lent in that direction. And now in the late game, I have like an armored still suit, which gets me some of the benefits of light armor as well. But I could have chosen to do the opposite. I could have chosen to carry like a big thing of water around with me wearing heavy armor to like alleviate the combat challenge at the expense of having to solve different problems in another way. And I think that's the core of it, is it's not, match what this particular treadmill expects of you, or you will go backwards. It's like, here is a situation, and because of the setting, that situation is very clear and understandable. Like the sandstorms, like which are huge physical things that like a little warning will sound in the UI and say like a sandstorm will hit this zone in 2 minutes. And then quite rare for a game like this, again, it's a bit like the Worm. It's not a VFX that gets like overlaid on your character's perspective for a bit. It's a massive physical object basically that sweeps into the map from one side and out the other. And it's incredibly dangerous to be out in it. You have to like get inside or get shielded or get your vehicle into a cave or something to kind of protect it. I had an amazing, like, I think I told you about this, Paul, like an amazing moment where it has dungeons, for example, basically, that are sort of like you need for certain resources. And those can be like crashed ships that you explore. They're often quite short little experiences. And enemy types is basically only 3. So you're kind of, fighting scavengers and bandits of various kinds in different places. But the other are kind of like reclaimed old Imperial like research bases, like the sort of terraforming bases and things, kind of like lost in the desert. So you go these like underground places. Each of them usually has their own theme and story or whatever. And I was deep underground in one of those. And no, I was actually deep. It was a Fremen ruin. Came out, ran to my ornithopter, only to see the storm like much closer. I'd been underground, so I hadn't seen the warning. And I got out, and it's the first time I'd ever really been caught out in the open with my ornithopter, which had stuff in storage, so I couldn't put it in my pants. So I had to get in and try and outrun the storm. And we didn't even talk about the ornithopter controls, which are awesome. Like it has a sort of like hovery mode, and then to make it go fast, it's a glider basically. So you press shift to do, that cool thing in the first Denis Villeneuve movie where Leto basically dives, tucks the wings and dives the ornithopter. That's how they pick up speed. So you kind of use the engines to get high and then dive to pick up gliding speed. Did that trying to outrun the storm, only to realize the storm was moving much faster than I was. And then suddenly my entire screen is just sand. Like it's just sand. And all of the instrumentation goes nuts. I wasn't sure which way I was facing because there's no mini map. And all I could see was the damage readouts for the ornithopter, and each of the ornithopter's 4 wings, which are individual components, taking damage at different rates and going from like yellow to orange. And obviously if the wings start falling off, it's in a lot of trouble. And I realized that I couldn't keep trying to outrun it because I was basically keeping pace with it at that point. So I tried to use the map to figure out which way was backwards, turned into the storm, and then just tried to gain altitude. And eventually, so by going against it, let it pass over me. And then when I came out the other side, the ornithopter was genuinely like smoking and the wings are half falling off. But then I could cut the power, having burned all my fuel, and glide close enough to my base that I could get out and repair it and stuff. And that whole thing was just systems driven. And it was like,
wow,
I've just done a Dune. I've just had a whole Dune from start to finish.
Dune moment.
And I couldn't be more satisfied.
Yeah, I think that's the last thing to touch on really is just like how dynamic the world actually feels. And I think they will expand on this in the future. But yeah, the storms coming in, you mentioned the spaceships that just crash land, and suddenly Chris and I are staring at it, trying to work out how on earth we get to it because they always land in an area surrounded by worms.
Well, there was that very first time we tried this where before we progressed up the skill tree at all, before we had ornithopters, a little spaceship came down on the other side of the mountain that our bases were against. And we climbed the mountain. We were just learning the grappling hook and the suspensor thing at the time. So it felt quite scary because the fall damage can be quite lethal. And you were the brave one that chose to like rocket yourself off the cliff with such force that you could glide all the way out to this wreck in the desert.
Surrounded by sand. Like, there was no safety anywhere nearby.
So there's nothing to hook onto to like jet yourself back the other way. And I was stood on top of the mountain just watching. And then you said something like, "Oh, because we hadn't looted one of these for you." I think you realized you didn't have the cutting laser, which you usually use for mining, but you also use to like break into wrecks and stuff. I was like, "I think I need the cutting laser," and then we both heard the and like the worm come out of the ground in another direction, and just like I think I tried firing like a little dart rifle at it to see if I could distract it from another way, but I stood there and did not help. I just watched as it just came straight for this ship and then dived. And then you were standing on top of it. And then the worm came out from underneath the ship and just dragged the entire thing under. And I think that was your first worm death.
Yeah, I think that was the first.
It was it was just like, bye.
I was truly panicking. I was like, why have I done this? Standing on top of this wreck, this worm is glugging away. And I was like, oh, I don't know what to do. Yeah. The accidental hilarity in that game is extremely good because obviously it takes itself quite seriously, but so many of the systems just interact in very sort of wacky ways. You'll accidentally leap and enable your suspensor belt, and suddenly the worm's like, "Hello, I heard that." And you're like, "No, sir, you did not." It's incredible.
And sometimes you're asking your mate to jump out of the buggy so you can grab a few more bandits for the death still. Just you know what I mean? Like,
it's gonna kill 8 guys and fill up your buggy with corpses so you can put them into the sucky machine. So
yeah, exactly.
It's really something.
It takes a full hour to get them dry, so you gotta whack in a full batch before you sign off for the night. Else you're not going to have enough water to make silicon in the morning.
Frank Herbert, his vision manifest at last.
Look, like it's the horny people of Cocaine Planet, and they sure do. That's Dune.
That's Dune. Yeah,
that sounds fantastic. I'm actually going to download it as soon as this podcast is over.
Yeah, I hope you like it. I would really love to get the Marsh verdict on it if we talk about it again, because like.
Can I play it on my own?
Yeah, 100%.
Do I?
100%.
Do I? Okay. Okay. Sweet. I will do that. And that's not a lie for once. Is that all the podcast we have time for?
It's certainly all the game opinions you're getting from me, unless you want me to talk about the sheer amount of Magic the Gathering I've been playing for the last couple of months. Which I'm not going to, frankly.
Yes.
Yeah, in the time since I've been away from the pod, I think I've gone through a full hyperfixation rotation. Like, I'm out of Destiny now, and for some reason, big into Magic the Gathering and Dune, because things I liked when I was 10, I will never stop liking. But
that's the way to be.
Yeah, it is. It's
full regression back to childhood.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I mean, was there ever any doubt? I mean, regression suggests progression previously. So, yeah. But yes, I think that might be it. I mean, obviously, we don't usually mono game pod, but sometimes all you do is build Lego in the desert with your pal. So
that's all you need, really. Mm-hmm. It's been a pleasure. I very much enjoyed this. Thank you for having me.
It's been lovely having you. Yeah, we should have you again.
Now.
I'm very sweaty too.
Yeah, partly from the heat of the evening and partly from the sheer desire to check on my death stills.
Have those boys been sucked dry yet? Better check.
Well, I won't keep you from that. It seems important.
As soon as you got it downloaded, it'll tell you what server we're on. I suppose we're on a European server, Marsh, so you might need to... I don't know. We'll figure something out.
Yeah.
So I'll start a new character. Right.
We'll take care of you.
Yeah. Stay hydrated, everybody.
All these recordings are uploaded. It feels so weird just going straight into the outro. But
yeah, it always does, doesn't it?
All these recordings are uploaded to YouTube. You can find other nonsense by us. The address for that is youtube.com/CrateandCrowbar. And thanks as always to our backers on Patreon. You can back us too at patreon.com/CrateandCrowbar or join our wonderful Discord community, the link for which is on our website, which is crateandcrowbar.com. That's it. I've been Marsh Davis.
I've been waggling my eyebrows at Paul to make him talk next.
I've been Paul Canavan.
And do you know what's fun? We talked about Dune, and your name is Paul. What's the Paul perspective on this, Paul?
Well,
my middle name is Paul, but we won't get into that.
Oh,
well, a game in which I don't exist. The dream.
I dream of it.
I dream of it.
Good. Bedtime.